All right, I think we're live.
We are.
Let's start by saying good morning and happy post-Memorial Day. I was just explaining to Justin that there is no filter on my camera. I'm just this red from the weekend. And I'll let Justin take it away from here.
No problem. So you had a good beach. I'm guessing it was the beach?
Yeah, too much beach.
Too much beach. Okay. All right. So we just hit the 10 o'clock. Let's give some people a couple minutes to join in here as they filter in, and then we can get started. So anything come up in the last week, Alex, related to cyber insurance in your QBRs, meetings, talking to prospects, anything that you did in your day-to-day that we should hash out or discuss?
One of the main things was the amount of coverages you need for given areas of cyber.
Okay. So does this customer already have cyber? Is this one of our customers, a prospect, someone you were just talking to in the cybersecurity?
I believe they were looking into a policy of their own. They might have an add-on to their regular insurance policy, but I think they're looking into getting a specific one.
Okay. So the first thing we have to do is obviously they got to go shop. We got to fill out the questionnaires. Do they have it now? You don't believe so? You think they might have something? Okay.
Yeah, I think they're shopping around.
Okay. So that's not uncommon today. Many businesses haven't had it, and now the brokers are starting to really enforce it. I am a strong proponent of it. The main reason I push for it is because, one, everything we do today is on technology. And there is a cross-referencing somehow. They will find a way that you use some tech device to, something happened in your business, and it could be related to tech. Hey, you were on your cell phone when the tree fell, or when the car was, you don't want any reason that a business doesn't qualify for compensation if there was a E&O breach or just a general business thing. Somehow they're going to pass the buck potentially. And if it's not the same carrier, they'll say, hey, oh, this was really falls under cyber, but it really wasn't, but it could be. So having the cyber policy gives you complete defense, no matter where you are. So yes, sometimes some businesses don't need it, but we strongly advise it because there's some influence of tech. Everything we do in our lives today, you don't want to run the risk of them pushing back saying, this kind of falls under the cyber claim, and it really wasn't a cyber claim. And you'll have the carriers fighting against themselves versus you trying to fight that battle. Okay. So that answers kind of the first part of the question. So yes, they definitely should at least consider it if the premiums are the right amount of money and they have the budget for it, just to take off that battle. When it comes to determining the coverage, we typically have to sit with the customer and evaluate where is their biggest exposure. Okay. What does their risks look like? And most brokers will either talk to their IT department or someone like us to help determine that. So it all depends on the type of business they are. So obviously, if it's an accounting law firm, they already know they have very critical data, PII type data. If it's a medical firm, they'll have PHI. But let's say it's a manufacturer, okay? Or let's say manufacturer. They're going to have different risks than, say, an accounting firm or a legal firm. So for them, like ransomware is a big one.
Yeah.
Okay. So if they get hit, they still might be able to do their day-to-day job. They might not be able to take new orders.
Yeah.
They might not be able to process credit cards, invoices. They might have a bigger revenue loss than, say, the widgets stopping. Now, if they have technology that runs machinery, like CNC machines that do cuts and things like that, they could get hit and be down. And then now you have a manufacturing hit. One of our customers is in the fabrication of sprinkler pipe. So they don't install the pipe, but they buy the 20 or 30-foot pipe that goes in a ceiling, and they put the heads on there at specific lengths based on where this particular pipe is going. And I've had this conversation with the owner a couple different times. And what we've determined is that, yeah, like he could operate as long as he knows we have a backup and they're air gapped and there's no one going to get the data and we can restore from backup within a reasonable amount of time.
As in the bread and butter isn't affected if managerial or clerical stuff is down.
Correct. Okay. So and they probably have, their backlog is typically a week and a half. So he determined that as long as in a week or week and a half, we could have him back up and running, there's no drop off in the shop.
So we can lower the amount of coverage for.
Okay. So they necessarily don't have a lot of data risk. So if we were to run a data scan on their network, they really don't have a whole lot. Probably some payroll records, probably some intellectual property, their QuickBooks, things like that. Okay. But there's nothing that if got ransom or was leaked or whatever, the world's going to end to their business. And that's the conversation we had. However, if it ever took longer than a week, okay, then they would have some because now they don't have orders to place. They don't have they print stickers that are multicolored based on the area of the print that kind of go tied to their drawings. So as long as they have that print and they have their data, which is all done in shop folders, they're okay. If it got over a week, then they have some issues. The biggest interruption they would have is, like you said, admin, clerical, okay? They couldn't receive payments from vendors. They couldn't receive, they couldn't send out bills because they couldn't cut checks until QuickBooks gets opened. I guess they could handwrite a couple if they knew them. They couldn't process orders, take quotes, do bids. So there's a business interruption aspect there that could be impacted. So when we went through our analysis with them, the numbers that they quoted, they wanted it, the smallest they could do was $500,000, the carrier, as an aggregate. But the biggest hit was like, all right, we only cover $25,000 of business interruption. That's not enough for them because most of their business is clerical. And we actually had to argue with the underwriter because the underwriter said, hey, technically your business isn't interrupted. But yes, it is, because we could lose $100,000 bid if it's a 2-day bid. And that's how we win a lot of our work is, hey, these installers might say, hey, we got a job. I need it back in 3 days. What are you going to look like from a cost perspective? What's the current cost of pipe? What's the cost of fabrication? Obviously, that changes based on economies and things like that. Labor forces, timelines, like how fast they got to get it out. Does it have to be an expedite because they have an emergency job or something like that? The company wouldn't be able to process that bid. And that bid could be $100,000, let's say. That could be a loss of revenue. So we fought and said, hey, if the clerical side is down due to business interruption, yes, they could still fabricate, but that's the bread and butter. I mean, if they can't win an order, having those fabricators in the back means absolutely nothing to the business.
It has to be taken into account.
Correct. Okay. So we fought, and then they helped with their insurance broker, and we were able to get them the proper coverage. So we wanted interruption of that $500,000, we wanted an aggregate of like $200,000 on that category. Okay. Because if they were down for a week, that's the revenue loss that they probably could have done if they won a bid. So we fought on that. We fought on the ransomware piece, but not too much. I think that was that. Like, we didn't care about PR, making sure that there was a lot of coverages there, or there was like a lot of subcategories that we didn't care so much about the what's the term? The limits. That was it. The limits regarding that. We have to find where the business has the most impact, and then we kind of attacked it that way.
What are the different categories for limits? I mean, you mentioned business interruption. What are the ones you typically find?
So I'm looking at an app right now, and it's funny because they don't even mention it. So it
And I
really,
noticed that on the one I had there was no.
yeah, let me see. But it's funny because I've seen applications where they list all the categories, okay, and they want you to fill in your limits, okay. Other times it's, hey, everything falls under this bucket of $1 million. You hope that, and you have to ask that question, like, is every limit $1 million? Obviously, it's a total of $1 million. But let's see if I can. Let me see if I can find one
A better
here,
example.
a better example. So I'm logging in to my email. See if
Yeah,
I
I
can.
just when they come across to me, they're, each one of them seems to have a different, each carrier seems to have just a different way of covering. Would you prefer that it was an umbrella of coverage, or would you say it's better to be able to select your own limits?
So it's kind of both. So the aggregate is always going to be there. Okay. So the $1 million. Okay. The $1 million of, let's say, coverage.
Okay.
I'm almost hopefully found one here soon. Oh, yes, I found one. Here we go. Okay. So the $1 million is an aggregate, meaning that claim cannot exceed $1 million. Okay. So that claim can't exceed $1 million total regarding the limit. Now, it could be a $2 million limit. It could be a $3 million limit, but then they're going to have sublimits underneath each one of those. So I'm looking at one here. Let's say the limit's 2 million. They have a privacy and security limit of $1 million with the first 5,000 on your own dime. Media, which is kind of like I called it earlier, PR. So you can go out and get a PR firm, okay, and you can go out and get a PR firm to help you enhance your vision. Hey, yes, we've been breached, but it wasn't too bad, or hey, they really didn't get in. Don't worry, we're having the best of the best. Look at this. Those kind of things.
Yeah.
Okay. But it's same thing. $5,000 is the minimum. You're out of pocket for it. But again, you have to judge when you're doing a incident response or you're working with your carrier on a claim, like how important is PR? Like if that's number 10 and you're going to chew through your $1 million or 2 million, because it's an aggregate, they'll pay up to $1 million, but that could be all if they do $1 million at a PR firm, they have no other money. So usually it never hits that high. Regulatory proceedings. So this is if you have to pay government fines, okay?
Okay.
Or you have to go, the HIPAA police come down on you, or the Attorney General's office. They're going to hit you with fines for being negligent with your data, depending on the industry you're in. That doesn't hit too much. Privacy breach notification of $1 million. So this is where we send out mailers, or your attorney sends out letters stating that, hey, you've been breached, okay? You've been compromised, and your social security number or personal information might be at risk, okay? So you're gonna basically have to put them under credit monitoring. So we have to call LifeLock or one of the vendors that maybe your insurance company is affiliated with. You're going to have to do a minimum of 2 years at a certain level. I don't know all that changes pretty regularly, so I don't know what the current exact level is. But I mean, when it used to be, when the last time I looked at it, was 2 years of basic credit monitoring. We didn't, right? So they're going to alert you if your social's been attacked or anything like that. Someone's opening up a bank account in your name. It used to run about $15 a person per month. Okay. So that can run up really quick. If you have let's say 1,000 records or 1,000 people, husband and wife, whatever it is, at $15 at 24 months, that's 350 grand.
Yeah.
Before you blink, just in those privacy or the privacy breach notifications. Now, it might come down. Maybe it's $8, but still, you're going to chew through $200,000 to $300,000 in just fees if you don't have the right coverage. Computer and legal experts. So this is IT people, forensic accountants, legal teams, all of that stuff to come in and stop the actual ransom if needed. Data restoration. So let's say they got a ransomware and they got attacked and they had no backup. They had no way to restore. There are companies that you can pay the ransom to. You can work with them to restore your backup, things like that. So and they're going to charge in emergencies $300 to $400 an hour. So as I'm saying, these numbers can go up really quickly and you can chew through this million very fast.
Yeah.
Computer fraud. So if it was a wire transfer, 500,000. Okay. So this one had a lesser sublimit of only 500,000 on a 2 million for computer fraud. So that way, if you got exposed, you had to pay a ransom, you got extorted by another party and you had to pay out, they're only going to cover 500,000 of it. Okay. So then the business interruption one was next. Okay. That was $1 million, but it had a 3-day waiting period. That was its retention. So instead of being $5,000, you had to wait 3 days. So whatever you lost in the first 3 days of revenue,
yeah,
then you would start getting paid out.
I see.
Okay. So that could be,
is there a negotiation or
yes,
changes?
100%.
Okay.
You
So
can negotiate.
1 day. Yeah.
Okay. 1 day, 12 hours, 24 hours. But obviously they're going to underwrite this with the premiums being related to that piece. Okay. So there, again, that's just a couple of them. Social engineering frauds, wire transfer fraud. So depending on your type of business, they can give you limits. But I have seen applications recently where they're saying, hey, you fill in your sublimit so that way we can price it accordingly. Because like I said earlier, that the customer or the carrier doesn't know exactly where your risks lie. Okay.
Yeah.
Like I said,
well, there's nuance in every business and exactly how, what is valuable and where. I guess, I wanted to lead into the next question about, so, we have business interruption and that can be a good estimation as to how much you lose in a day, but how do you determine, and I know this answer, I just want to have you elaborate.
Yeah.
How do you determine PII and its value? How do I know what a social security number is worth to the person who breached, or how do we come up with coverage? Is there some sort of program that analyzes it all?
So unfortunately, a social security number is a social security number. Okay. Yeah. They don't value it on the person's net worth. Okay.
Yeah.
So the owner of Comcast's social getting exposed versus, I'm just going to use your exposure. Okay.
Yeah.
They're probably on different levels. Okay. But at the same time, it doesn't compute that way. Okay. There's a formula that says, hey, every record is worth, the credit monitoring we talked about earlier, that they say every record's worth $15 or $20 or $24, whatever that is per month to monitor. Okay. Your social being exposed is your social being exposed.
Yeah.
And your social, I think I talked about this before. There is no level of your social security number or EIN, like different levels of exposure. It either is or it isn't.
Yeah.
And it could be exposed 40 times from a company, or it could be exposed 1 time. That risk is the same. Okay. So like, hey, they got into our
account the status of, if you have Bill Gates' social security number, it's not going to say, and now this is $90 billion worth of coverage. Yeah,
exactly. Okay. Now that's why insurance exists. There'll probably be a class action lawsuit or something. If you have a lot of net worth individuals where they do get breached, there could be something to that from a legal aspect, but from a protection aspect, if we ran our program Actifile and it doesn't know who Bill Gates is. It just
Yeah.
sees a social security number and
That's
says,
good.
hey, that's one record.
Okay.
Okay. And then you also have to consider our program has a little bit of a flaw because you have to consider, all right, how many duplicate records did it find? Like I said earlier, like 2 minutes ago, if my social's in 7 different spreadsheets,
Yeah.
1 time or 7 times, it doesn't matter. It's a breach, and that record is an exposure. So we have to go back when we actually get the records and kind of review them to see, all right, how many, it picked up 8,000 records, but is it really only 4,000 because everybody's stuff is in there for 2 years or 3 years?
Yeah.
Okay. But it gives us a good benchmark to kind of understand how many records. And then you typically have to, then you take those records, figure out what that would look like if you had to pay credit monitoring. So you start at 300,000. Okay. 7 days of business interruption costs X. Okay. And you start adding up these numbers, and that's how you come up with a limit. They typically start at 500,000, the premiums or the policies. Then it goes up in 250,000 increments. Some do a 500,000. Some say you got to go to 1 million first, then you can get the incremental increases. Each vendor we've worked with is different from that security aspect, but we can kind of create a benchmark. So if you're at 1.2 million, maybe you just get 1 million of coverage. Okay. Or hey, if you're I want no exposure, I want no out of pocket, then you might jump for the 1.5 and be overinsured. It really depends on your how you value your risk. Okay. But it is a interesting fact, and it's a lot of things because a lot of companies still don't have this insurance, and now there's a bigger pressure to get it, like you said, in that prospect that you were talking to. But yes, my answer would be get it, get the right coverages. But again, the most reason is just you don't want those two to come full circle. You don't want those insurances saying, hey, oh, this could be a cyber claim. It falls under this category because you were using a cell phone or you were using a tablet, but it had nothing to do with because you got an auto accident or whatever the reason would be.
Yeah.
Okay. Some logical reason where they could see a hole where they could push the buck. That is the biggest reasoning to have this insurance. So that way you let the two carriers fight if they're not the same carrier.
Exactly. Because it's cyber. It's a dedicated coverage. And so I know we talked about, we wanted to get into a bit of current events.
Sure.
If you had mentioned this Lincoln College. So when you said Lincoln College closed due to a ransomware, I immediately thought, okay, they're closed temporarily because they're dealing with a ransomware attack. But when I went on the website, they're actually permanently closed due to a ransomware attack. And I went through, it says they've been in business for 157 years. They survived the economic crisis of 1887, a major campus fire in 1912, the Spanish flu of 1918, the Great Depression, World War II, and the 2008 global financial crisis. But a ransomware attack completely took them out of business.
So that is partly true. Okay. But it was basically the old saying, the straw that broke the camel's back.
Okay.
Okay. So they had some decline in attendance and registrations and all that stuff due to COVID. If you read deeper into the article or go on their actual website, okay, they had some.
It was the perfect storm.
Yes, exactly. So they already had COVID hit. Attendance was down. People were like, I'm not going to go to a campus. I'll go to a virtual online school or whatever for a year, maybe transfer then versus risk getting COVID, especially if you have a medical condition. So they're probably, most colleges have been experiencing some downturn. So you take that, and then right when they started to have to recruit the following year's applicants, which was like November, December, when the seniors go back, that's when they got hit with the ransomware. And it basically took down all their administrative functions, their applications, their websites, everything. So at the end of the day, they were able to recover the data, but I guess the damage had been done. That loss of time and to get everything checked and back up and running optimally, they lost their critical admissions window. And basically, like I said, the straw that broke the camel's back, it literally they just decided, I guess the trustees of the university just said, hey, we can't do it anymore. The money's not there. We don't have the enrollment. So in May, they announced they're closing. So I guess they tried to ride that wave through.
Yeah.
Hopefully, just like everything else. You said they survived World War II, World War I, fires and global other stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
They said, let's see if we can survive this. But after getting the ransomware and hitting that perfect storm, it kind of just led to the end. And that's not uncommon.
Yeah.
There's plenty of statistics that say, hey, typical small business will fail after a ransomware within 6 months. Okay. There's a high percentage of businesses that will go under. If you went to your doctor and you get that letter stating that they lost all your medical records, or they're released to the public, especially if you have some serious medical concerns or some embarrassing information, okay, that's very personal to you, and that got out to the general public now, okay, you think you're going to go back to that doctor again?
Yeah.
Probably not. Okay. So that's what they're saying is typically within 6 months to a year, usually in the high end, over 70% of businesses do go under if they have a major breach and attack. So, I mean, that kind of December, May, that's 5 months, like that kind of hits right in that window. You give it the college try, but at some point they're going to say no. Or even if I'm a college student, like, hey, I'm going to go try to apply to Lincoln University. Our website is currently down. Okay. You come back the next day. Our website's currently down. You're going to be like, all right, sorry, I'm moving on to students today, college is expensive. You're trying to get early admission, get the best, which is something newer that didn't exist when I went to school, where if you commit early, they're saying, hey, I'll give you more money because they know now they got you locked in under a contract. Okay. It's called an early admission. Hey, we'll give you a full ride, but you have to commit in, I don't know, January or whatever that date is, versus waiting to the very last minute, because then they can pull their resources. Hey, we have 70% of our admission money's gone. We can only give 30% out, but we know we've tied up this where you're offering scholarships, you're offering all these to people, but you have no guarantee that they're coming. And then it's like you have this big pot of money and you got to hold it to the very last minute. So again, if I'm a student and the website's down for 2 weeks or whatever it was, and you want to start applying, writing your essays, getting through all that, you're going to be like, screw it. To be honest, like, I'm going to go somewhere else. If you can't have it up, I use my wife as an example. She hates companies that like their technology doesn't work. It's like, I'll pay $1 more for technology that works well.
100%.
Than sitting here and trying to do stuff online, or, hey, I want to pay a bill and they charge me a $4 convenience fee. I'm like, wait, I'm giving you the money electronically via my bank account. It's as good as gold. Here it is. And you're going to charge me for it? I'm trying to make your life easier.
Yeah.
I'd rather just mail a check and not have to pay a $5 convenience fee, 50 cents maybe. But that's where the world is heading. And if your technology is down due to these attacks, people will just move on. They don't want to. Unfortunately, we're becoming a very impatient society because of the tech, but we rely so heavily on it because it does make our lives a lot easier.
I find it, to me, something that would eventually take down the college would be this. Let's say it's a giant lawsuit because it was a bunch of PII data. That to me would be the thing that breaks the camel's back, not just a literal ransomware incident. It's just, it blocked everything. And it says that it created an unclear picture of fall 22 enrollment projections. And not that ransomware isn't something to take seriously. I just, you would think that a resulting litigation after a leak of data would be something schools face more than a ransomware attack. So it's crazy.
Yeah. So that's just one. I think that it came out like right after I think we did our last one in early May. So, but it was very interesting to read about that. This stuff is real and it's not going away.
I mean, I don't, do you have any other topics you want to touch on for today's,
I do. I have one last one.
absolutely.
So yesterday, a what was it? A 0-day exploit came out via the Office 365 suite. A researcher was able to find out that through using PowerShell and the Microsoft deployment tool for 365, basically was able to drop a vulnerability macro,
Yeah.
okay, into, oh, sorry, the Microsoft support diagnostic tool. Sorry, I misspoke. That collects and analyzes the data so Microsoft can debug their applications.
Yeah.
Basically, someone like us would use that, or someone could download it, basically could run a PowerShell into Word, which could allow some macro to run, or unzip a RAR or some zip file that could then lead to a ransomware. So it's funny that its own application, like Microsoft's own support tools, can be used to compromise, but PowerShell gets down. We've all asked previous to PowerShell, and for the ones that don't know, it's a command line tool that lets you get down into the engine level of Microsoft's code, okay? Back in the Windows 95, 98 days, you didn't really have the tools to dig deep or integrate applications. But today we're all about collaboration, sharing data, integrating data. So they had to basically unlock the tool. So Microsoft in 2012 version of Server, I think is about when it came out for the initial, they created this program called PowerShell. It's basically an advanced command prompt that lets you get down in the nitty gritty parts of code. It's still limited, but it lets you do and create hooks into applications. But when you do that, it creates vulnerability. So they found this, they saw it as a big weakness. So they did it with what they call a 0-day. Doesn't happen very often. Microsoft usually waits till their patch Tuesday. That's the second Tuesday of every month, but they released a 0-day, stating that this is a critical piece. There is yet to be a fix, okay? However, most of the security operations centers, the SOCs that we use, have already kind of put themselves at high alarm and are monitoring advanced PowerShell scripting at a higher level. So we might get a couple phone calls today stating, hey, you've broken your abnormality of scripting or something like that. If you even do any, we're seeing some unusual activity. You might want to look deeper into whoever the user was that gets alerted. So they're all on high alert, looking for this. Microsoft typically doesn't wait long to make these patches, okay? If they announce a 0-day, typically when they announce the 0-day, they've already had the patch like ready to go, or hey, it's in ultra beta testing and give it another day or so and it'll be out, if not the same day as the announcement. But I expect something within the next 24 hours to be out there. And then anybody who has Microsoft Office that's part of the 365 suite, it should auto patch. But if not, you definitely want to have your IT professional check into it and push it. If it's not set to auto patch, I know we set 0 days to 24 hours. We'll gamble that, hey, something breaks, we'll have to deal with it. But it's too out there to know and to run that risk of something big happening.
Yeah.
So that's just one that happened the other day that was a little shocking to the industry. And it always seems like these come out during the holidays. It's like someone finds something, or the Kaseya breach happened during 4th of July. It's like they know, or the cyber guys know when to wait for things or start to see weird, like why would a researcher find it now? It's always around the United States holiday season when our guard is down. So you definitely have to have another person with eyes and ears, because we all want to enjoy holidays and our time off, keeping an eye on this stuff, okay? Even if I'm not, as a IT cybersecurity guy, staring at my screen, I still have my Reddit, I still have my groups, all my connections that I'm engaged with, that if something does trigger like this, I'm going to hear about it. Okay.
Yeah, so my Google News feed was, Microsoft, 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 Microsoft. It was there's a large amount of coverage on it.
Yeah. So, but again, that's also a negative. The more coverage, the
Well, the higher
more.
visibility it is, which means I think that's part of the reason why it's a 0 day. It's because this is now a known thing and can be exploited. We have to do it in 24 hours.
Yep. So, but that's just another one of these, hey, things that we got to look into, verify, but we're hoping this patch comes soon because again, people will start taking advantage of it very, very, very soon. Because just they know the vulnerability now. It's out there, it's public, it's known. Let's see if there's anything else on the docket that I can talk about that I've seen recently. Nothing too major. Let me go to the other news. Microsoft. I did hear the other day that there is companies are starting to get around two-factor a little bit. Not so much the text messages or the application levels. It's the, hey, answer these questions or the CAPTCHAs kind of base levels.
Security question. Yeah.
The other way is that they're getting you to fake your phone. So you're giving up information about your cell phone or your one-time password or your PINs, okay? There are starting to get that, but it's still very hard. But if you give them enough information, who your carrier is, what the PIN, they could basically mimic your SIM, and that's been known to be done because you're giving up information and they're getting it between the time it goes from the web server to your cell phone. They have enough information on you to kind of intercept that and be able to backdoor it. Again, it's a very, how do I say it? It's still early, but it's still so much more secure than just a single password. But
100%. And would you say that one of the authenticator apps, whether it's Auth or Google or Microsoft, would they be more secure than a text message?
The answer is yes, because of the push note. The best way is a push notification, in my opinion. Okay. That way it's tied to the actual token of the phone. So like if you don't back it up and you get a new phone, you got to get someone to unlock you and reset it. Okay. That is probably the most secure way. Google Authenticator is pretty good, but we got to still, it doesn't, I can click on the app if they get into my phone, they can see it. Now they can't download any of the tokens or anything, but they definitely need to work the process a little bit. But yes, if you're going to use a changing code, like a Symantec that I use for like an investment application or Google Authenticator, make sure your phone is password protected with a longer, if you're going to do a number key, make it long or even have biometrics. That's a strong one too. But yes, they are starting to spoof SIMs. So the text messaging version is probably something that is a little weak. That came out about 2 weeks ago. It wasn't huge. Zyxel had a threat in their firewall. They had a vulnerability day 0 that they announced. It's a smaller firewall brand, so it's not like huge like a Cisco or SonicWall or a FortiGate. But still, again, every vendor is subject to these. This was a command line injection through their CLI. Everybody has a vulnerability today. So you just got to put those layers like we talked about in our first 4. Every layer of protection you can put in, you have to put in today. So other than that, this is a shorter one today. With the holiday and stuff, I haven't really done too much research. But again, I'm happy that we were able to touch on the topics of the on the school, and then that application about why even a business that doesn't think they need cyber should get it. Just to recap, again, just get it because you don't want the cyber companies or the insurance companies, excuse me, using that as a way to deny a claim or fight a claim. Oh, it's really not this department, and they can drag their feet. And now you have two different companies. You got Travelers and say Chubb fighting at each other. Okay, that you're down. You need to be made whole as fast as possible, and now you're handcuffed due to them fighting, and you need to get your business back up.
Yeah.
So that is my strongest reason to get it. But there's probably others. If anybody had anything in the chat, I didn't see anything that would say something. But otherwise, I will let the audience go. Go enjoy the sun today. Not for you, Alex. You need to stay in and put some aloe on your face.
Aloe and
yeah, exactly. So I'll let everybody run and be well, and talk to you on the next one. Thanks, everybody. See ya.